All right, well, sounds good. Thank you, Risa, for the introductions. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. Eric and I are both very happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity to share our company with you. I'm Brandon, just so you can familiarize yourself with our voices. I'm Brandon, and
And I'm Eric.
if you hear someone's voice squeak, that's most likely Eric. So our topic today is sustainability makes sense. And really what we want to share with you guys is how we've been able to introduce sustainability into our company and still manage to grow and make a profit. We thought what better way to start than a John Muir quote. When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe, which really sums up sustainability for us. Just realizing the fact that we're not living on planet Earth as if it's a platform, but we are living within planet Earth, and whatever we are doing out in the landscape today affects everything else tomorrow. So a basic outline for today's presentation, we'll start off with some background on our company, our history, how we got on the sustainability track, some of our bigger ideas, following our sustainability action plan and where we are headed. We'll get into some of our compost tea and organics and give you an introduction to our operations and run you through some numbers. One of the larger topics is creating a niche, making connections, and building an edge. And then we'll touch briefly on the future and the landscape industry's higher calling. So we thought what better way to track a company's progress than with Christmas cards. So you can obviously see here from 2007 to 2009, it was basically Eric and one other guy from high school doing your conventional landscape services.
Yeah, and I was a typical landscaper starting off when I was in high school. Would push a mower on the side. Went to college for a year and decided college wasn't for me. So in 2007, me and a buddy, as you can see on the top photo, literally just bought 2 mowers and started mowing lawns. 2008, we kind of increased to 5 employees, and at this time I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but the clientele kept growing and the work was still there.
And obviously you can see here today we're up to 25 employees and we've introduced some Photoshop skills. So to quickly run you through the numbers from 2007 to 2013.
Yeah, so 2007 and 2008 were smaller years, and 2009 it really started picking up, and that's when I really started realizing this is something I might want to do as a full-time career. As you look at these numbers to kind of see where our services lie, 2007 we were just mowing. 2008 we started doing mowing, fall cleanups, spring cleanups, trimming. In 2009 I introduced us your granular fertilizing program. 2010 I started learning how to climb trees, did a little tree work. We introduced snow removal. I built my first retaining wall, and it's still standing today. Maybe not be the straightest, but it still stands. 2011 it was when Brandon came aboard full-time, and this is when we started to talk about sustainable services. Sustainability wasn't a big component of our services in 2011, but the idea was that's when it started. 2012, I was blessed to hire another great designer, Megan, and that's when we started introducing bigger projects with design build, not only patios, plants, tear-outs, hardscape, all that. And then 2013 is when we really started to take on the sustainable services, and Brandon will touch base on a couple of those projects in the upcoming slides. But you can see from 2007 to 2011, there were no sustainable services in our company, but it showed growth. But Brandon really pushed me to start offering sustainable services, and you can see in the next 2 years, in 2012 and 2013, we continued to grow, offering the services I just said, plus sustainable services.
Yeah, and the way that Eric and I sort of came together on this was while I was going to Iowa State for landscape architecture, me and another fellow classmate, we did a paper called The Future of Lawn and Landscape Stewardship, which was sort of an investigation into the present landscape maintenance industry and how we can make recommendations for sustainable retrofitting. So we used Ringer's Landscaping as a case study. We had him come into our professional practice class and give a presentation, and we wrote a whole paper about whether it was feasible or not for him to make these changes to be more sustainable. And we sort of came to the conclusion that it didn't make any sense and it wasn't quite possible. And then in 2011, I came on board with him full time, and we're basically doing what we said couldn't happen. So you can see in 2010, Ringer's company message was basically about saving clients time. It was about convenience, and it was sort of your typical, we offer good customer service and we do a good job. Then you sort of transition to 2012. This is pulled off of our new website, and our message has switched to our passion is in designing, building, and maintaining landscapes today which do not compromise the potential of tomorrow, while our mission is to connect our clients with the environment and promote all the benefits of a meaningful, sustainable landscape, which is quite the shift in overall company branding and overall message, but we were able to maintain and grow with past clients while gaining new clients while making this transition. One of the larger contributions I made when I first came on board was creating a sustainability action plan for our company. And the way this works is that our first one was in 2012, so this is the second revised edition. So we have an overall vision that Ringer's Landscaping will be a premier model for sustainability and environmental stewardship throughout our community and the greater landscaping industry. And then we break down each division of Ringer's, and we set concrete goals that we're able to track, and we review those goals throughout the season and then again at the end of the season. And this is just sort of our roadmap for how we can slowly make a transition from a conventional company to a more sustainable one. So just a couple quick examples under design build here. We have goal number 4, install a CalStar recycled brick paver project. That is an easily tracked goal. It's quantifiable, and it's something that we did right away in the beginning of the year. And I'll show you an example of that a little bit later on. This is an updated goal from 2012 from our property maintenance division. We wanted to secure one client and property which agrees to be maintained using all sustainable options. And we just picked that client up at the end of the year here. So that's very exciting. Some of our bigger ideas, I heard about this company out in Colorado that had college kids riding around on bikes with trailers and cutting people's lawns with the old reel mowers, and I thought it was just the coolest idea ever. And that's still something that we aspire to create a zero emissions maintenance crew. Probably not very feasible for out here in the suburbs, but definitely in the city we think it might have some legs. Another goal that was accomplished this year, for example, was promote and follow through on our community tree planting program. Erik's very much into philanthropy. He's always working with his church and going on mission trips to help rebuild Joplin, Missouri from the tornadoes, or Katrina in New Orleans. And so that's just embedded in our company. So one of the goals was we wanted to donate a tree for every tree that we planted, and we were able to hook up to the McHenry County Conservation District, and we planted and donated 100 native trees and shrubs on a local conservation site this fall. And then a last goal for fertilizing was harvest rainwater for compost tea brewing, which we absolutely did this year, and it made us more efficient to use the collected rainwater just because we could increase transfer speeds. So that's a very concrete example of how going sustainable actually made us more efficient and made us more money. We actually ended up harvesting 9,250 gallons of water from our roof. These are a couple long-term goals. I'll skip here to the long-term goals for our company are to completely eliminate chemicals by 2016. We'd like to build an electric fleet of vehicles. The bike ideas in there. These are just our really big ideas that we're not afraid to dream about, and we think we can slowly make our way to accomplishing some of these in the near future. We distributed this to all of our employees. So these are our general codes of sustainable conduct for the company. And then in the beginning of the year, when we're going over the handbook, we have everyone sign, "I will do everything in my power to achieve the goals and values which have been outlined in our SAP. I will periodically reference this document, and I will act as a leader by example and promote these values to all members of Ringers to ensure cohesiveness and thought and objective among the team." So we start by educating ourselves, and then we start to educate our employees, and then we are able to sort of radiate out and send that message to our clients. So here's everyone. This is a poster on our wall in the shop right by the check-in, check-out clock every day. Each guy sees this, and we're really trying to promote our value, which is landscaping today, tomorrow, for tomorrow. Really get that in their heads that we have a higher mission at our company. And it's really cool because each morning we have a morning meeting, and Erik yells out, "Landscaping today," and all the guys yell out, "For tomorrow," and it's just the coolest thing to hear. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
Okay, sorry guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh yeah. That I have to say, because I haven't seen the presentation, I am so impressed. You should be in like, Inc. magazine. I just think what you guys are doing is unbelievable. So I'm like blown away. So and there are questions. I can't I love that poster. Okay, so here's the first question. Are your employees full-time?
We are, since we're based in Chicago, we're a seasonal business. So March 1st, the month of March, we start our patios. So we bring our hardscape and construction guys in. And then April to November, end of November, depending on when the first snow flies, all of our maintenance guys arrive. We do have 2 designers and myself that work all year. And then we also do snow removal. So obviously that's just an on-call basis. Looks like we're going to have a lot of work this year. We've already had 3 snowstorms. So, but all the laborers are seasonal. And then we have 2 designers and myself that work full-time.
Okay, super. Okay, next question. Have you guys given any thought to using, this is an interesting question, any thought to using browsing or grazing animals among your services?
We've seen it out there. I believe they're doing that at O'Hare Airport, and it's definitely something that we would pursue in the future if we had a large enough property where it makes sense to have enough open range for the animals. And we think we'd eventually be able to secure clients that might be interested in that. So definitely a cool idea.
Well, like goats for grazing invasives,
Yeah, yeah.
Let me see. Have you guys when you do your mission and your goals, do you get employee feedback and suggestions? Like, do you incorporate that into your plan for the year?
Brandon does a really good job putting the overall ideas together, and then I usually just have discussions with my employees throughout the day. I'm always here at 6 o'clock, setting trucks up, getting schedules going, and a quick 5-minute conversation. How do you like this idea? And I kind of get a little feedback What I found out is bringing our guys into a meeting and sitting them down, they really don't give you a lot of feedback. They really just want to go out in the field and work. So when there's an opportunity to have a discussion while they're working, that's kind of where I take the opportunity to find out their feedback with this specific idea. So like an idea was electric blowers. So we brought one on a crew this year on property maintenance, and right away the guy said, "Oh, this is not going to work because it's not blowing wet grass or wet leaves." So what we were thinking about doing is, one, we understand where they're coming from, so it maybe be more frustrating. We're going to maybe try it on our construction crew where you only use it for 20 minutes in a day. So I use that feedback on a daily basis to kind of determine where we continue our sustainable approach in the company.
Oh, okay. Um, okay, here someone says the SAP document is just so inspiring. Okay, that's Monique Allen, who I know, and I would totally agree with her. That's what I'm looking at your SAP document. It's unbelievable. It's just so professional and cool. And so she wants to know if you used a model or a template to produce that, or did you just do that from scratch?
I made that from scratch, and it's actually and the entire thing's available on our website under the sustainability page. And I'm involved on the ILCA Sustainable Landscape Committee, and we're sort of working on creating different documents and guides for the landscape contractors. So we've done a rainwater harvesting guide. We're working on a rain garden guide, and then I will be, actually I've already produced a generic version that any company will be able to adopt and just sort of fill in the blanks and use it for their own use.
Will that be on your website, or where will that be?
That will be available through the ILCA Sustainable Landscape Committee.
Oh, okay.
But if you'd like to see, you can download ours off of our website under the sustainability page.
Oh, okay, great.
Which is just ringerslandscaping.com.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if you guys have that as your last slide, but I'm so sorry too. Someone posted a question about plants and I accidentally deleted it. So if you want to send that to me again, just as I'm taking questions. So there was a question about, in the class that ISU class study deemed that your sustainable model wasn't feasible. What was their thinking behind that?
I would say that was Dylan and I, who was my partner on that project. It was just our disconnectedness from the industry. I really didn't realize until I was here and actually engaged with the company what was actually going to be possible. So we were basically working, 5 hours away from Erik and just looking things up on the internet, and we're busy with other projects and things. And I didn't even find Mila, for example, wasn't even part of the conversation. I actually found that just digging around on the internet when I came back home. So
It's like basically not having enough information, or just not having all of the information, you think?
yeah, I think it was just a lack of connectedness and being engaged with the actual industry as sort of an outsider's student perspective.
Yeah, because one of the questions also is like, why don't what's the main drawback? Like, why would other companies do that? And maybe that's because they don't have the information they need, maybe really to transition.
Right.
And here's another question: is plant sourcing part of your sustainability picture?
Yeah, it's a little tricky when it comes to trees and shrubs. It's kind of hard to track exactly where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But we're always trying to align ourselves with companies that somehow are trying to do the right thing in terms of operating sustainably. So our garbage service, for instance, we picked the company we felt was trying harder than the rest of the waste management companies. And our perennial suppliers, we love to use, they're locally grown. We know that for a fact because we see them growing the plants each year. But so yeah.
That's great. Okay.
We're not going up to like Home Depot and buying plants. They're all locally grown perennials and things.
Right. Okay, so I think, yeah. So keep sending in your questions, but I'll let you guys take it. Keep going with your presentation, and we'll have another break or two for quite more
And
questions.
And one thing off the plants, a lot of landscapers may not have land to have this opportunity, but we usually try to book all of our projects for the week or 2 weeks. We just buy all the plants at once and store them in the back of our shop. So we're not wasting gas and wasting trips, which is being sustainable. So we have a staging area in the back of all for our plants.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big plus.
All right, well, we'll
Okay.
continue here.
Okay.
Thank you for the questions. So now we'll get into compost tea. Um, Fertilizing was only 5% of our company, so Erik was definitely more willing to take a risk on transitioning into an all-organic program. Um, we were willing to stick our neck out on this one and kind of see what happens. Um, Actually got involved with compost tea from being involved with things like Mila and ILCA, talking to various people who had been doing it, visiting their operations, and we just slowly became comfortable with the idea that this was actually feasible. And so this year was our first full-on year of a 100% organic program. What you see in front of you here is the way that we are branding and marketing compost tea to our clients. It's right there in front of you. We believe there is an effective, long-term, sustainable solution to conventional fertilizing, and at the heart of Ringer's organic approach is compost tea. So we really wanted to make sure we were doing things the right way, because organics do require a little bit more in-depth field work and research and sending out samples. So we really want to track our progress by taking soil samples, tracking things on the microscope. And then you also see our brewer here in the left-hand corner, and then our 2,500-gallon cistern, which is collecting the water, which we in turn use for brewing the tea. So this whole presentation is really focused on the numbers, so we thought we'd run you through our first year, and Erik can take it from here. Actually, in the bottom, you'll see Henry Moss is on the left there, and Robert Postuma, who developed the brewing system that we use. See Megan Bradburn back there with him. And really finding those resources, like a guy like Henry, it's been unbelievable. He's came in and sort of held our hand and guided us through the process, helped us acquire materials and ingredients, and really set us up on the right track. So that's just being engaged with the industry and connecting with the right people. So Erik will run you through some numbers here.
So when Brandon first introduced the compost tea idea, I love the idea, but I was a little hesitant as any business owner, because I knew that our 5% of our business was fertilizing, and you could see that we were making roughly $600 a day anytime we'd go out and fertilize. So it was profitable. It made sense. Yes, there was being chemicals added to the turf, but I knew that we were making money. So it took a long time for him to convince me that we should transfer over to the compost tea, and I'm glad he did, because you could see 2012 we roughly had 100 clients. We did 4 steps, and our profit was roughly a little over $12,000 in 20 working days, so that's $600 a day. By converting over to the compost tea in 2013, we actually increased our clientele base to 110. We actually only lost 1 client that said, I don't trust this organic approach, I'm worried about my dandelions. And I give that credit to Brandon, because as you saw on the slide before, we really marketed this product and educated our clients so they understood what they were going to receive. But you could see on 4 steps of compost tea this past year, we made $17,802. Now you can see that there were more working days, but to offset that is the material is a lot less, but there is more labor involved. And then the next number you can see is we kept a little over 3,600 pounds of nitrogen, 40 pounds of phosphorus, and 974 pounds of potassium out of the environment. And we also eliminated plastic bags, because a 50-pound granular bag of fertilizer, obviously you have the plastic bag. And then, like we said earlier, we harvested 9,250 gallons of rainwater. And it's unbelievable how fast we can transfer. The tank you see below is 250 gallons. It takes roughly a minute and a half to transfer 250 gallons into that tank because the cistern has a lot of pressure to it versus just putting a hose in and filling it up from the spigot. So that was being sustainable in itself.
So at this point, does anyone have any questions about our compost tea operation?
Okay, so
Actually, before you take questions, I'd like to kind of run you through how the fertilizing program works. So we have two guys that run just a dump truck, and the 250-gallon tank drives around, and we roughly can spread 125,000 square feet in a day, and it takes them roughly 6 hours. And so that's kind of how the operation works.
yeah, it's amazing how you guys have tracked everything with the numbers. And the metrics. It's great. So here's a
I'm
question.
sorry, I got one last number for you.
Oh, go ahead.
This year, we, instead of compost tea, we spread 195 acres or 8,500,000 square feet of compost tea.
That's amazing. So, so here's one question: is if you have customers that are skeptical about compost tea, like what do you say? What do you say to them?
We use a lot of references, so there's a lot of people out there already doing this. Harvard University, for instance, a lot of New York City parks. And we really run them through the logic behind it, which is that we are focusing on the soil rather than hooking a plant on drugs and you have to feed the drugs every single year for the rest of your life. We're really focused on building a sustainable soil that will grow a dense, healthy turf, which will in turn choke out weeds. So we sort of give them some science, give them some logic, and then you also have to talk about cost savings. Eventually you can wean yourself in less and less steps and focus on things like top dressing with compost and just aerating. So there's a lot of little different things you have to convey to the client. It's a little bit of a mixture of science and numbers, but it's really handled on an individual basis.
And in regards to the one client we lost, that's exactly what I did. He was a close client. We mowed his lawn, did a spring cleanup, mulch, did some side work for him, educated him, and then ultimately he said, you know what, I would rather have you spread the granular back to the program. And then that's when we step and say, it's not what we believe in, that's not the approach we're going to take. So ultimately we just said we had to part ways in regards to the fertilizing program because we wanted to go the compost route and we didn't believe in the conventional fertilizing program.
So, so another question is, I think in your slides you said that there was a 4-step program. Do you mean that there's 4 applications a growing season? Like, what did you mean by the 4 steps?
There's 4 applications of compost tea, and then we also apply milky spore. So we start in April, and then the May, and then we do one in August, and then at the end of the year, right before it freezes. Obviously, compost tea is a living organism, or has microbial life in it, so you want to make sure you apply it before it's below 40 degrees. So our last step this year, I think it was to be late October, if I remember correctly.
And then we also, just this year in the first season, we did apply an organic-based crabgrass just because we were transitioning and we didn't want to go cold turkey right away on our clients with weeds. So we figured after a full year of going organic with the tea next year, we won't be doing the pre-emergent. We might try corn gluten, and we haven't quite figured out exactly what that first step will be.
Yeah. I've heard mixed reviews on corn gluten, good or bad, or
Yeah, we have to.
So there's a question. Here's a good question. Do you make your own compost for the tea, or do you buy it? And also, the same person's asking, what problems have you had using the compost tea?
Well, the route we decided to go um, was to do it by the book and what was recommended from um, from our compost tea supplier, um, which I'm blanking on the name. Greater Earth Organics. So they kind of sell the ingredients. There's a microbial feed. There's a humusy. A couple of the steps we had a fish hydrolysate, and we just stuck to their tested and guaranteed products, which are supplied by Purple Cow Organics in Madison, Wisconsin. Just because to have things tested, we did have our first couple brews sent out to the Soil Food Web in New York, and came back with really great results. But I mean, that in itself is almost a $350 test. So we decided to just go with already proven ingredients. It would definitely save a lot of money to use your own compost eventually, but initially to get everything tested and verified would be quite expensive.
Yeah, it's hard to
And
control
then,
that.
yeah, second question about problems. Just in terms of figuring out how we were going to apply it, the hose reel setup. I remember one time they did it when it was too cold and it was freezing and frosting up, and they're dragging the hoses and everything was getting messy and dragged around. There's definitely a learning curve, and we were able to track each step and see how we were becoming more and more efficient and more profitable. So it's definitely been a hands-on learning experience.
And this was an opportunity where I asked after step one, or the first application of compost tea, what could work. And the two laborers that were actually doing the work said we need a hose reel. And so I bought them a hose reel just because they said it, and it cut off a tremendous amount of time because the old hose reel we had wasn't reeling up. So listening to your employees and taking their feedback seriously is a huge component to any success of the program.
So we have a question is, I think, what brand of compost tea brewer do you use? I think it was Geo, it said, I couldn't read it.
Yeah, it's from Greater Earth Organics, and GOT is
GOT, okay, Greater Earth Organics, okay.
and they're up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That area.
And now, have you gotten customers? We have tons of questions. It's amazing, you guys. Well, anytime you talk about lawns and tea and organics, it's always fascinating. So what has been sort of your feedback from your customers? Have they remarked, have they said something compost tea versus their old fertilizer system?
You know what? We couldn't have picked a better year to transition. Weather-wise, it was an extraordinary growing season, and so everyone's lawns were looking pretty good this year. I remember the guys commenting one time when we were using the fish hydrolysate. It was a product called Green Up, so it had lots of iron to create that green effect on the grass, and they said they cut out at halfway through a lawn, and they went back the next day and they could see a line where they had sprayed and where they hadn't sprayed yet.
Wow.
So we've had, I don't know about negative.
It was actually surprising because last year, obviously, we had the drought, and so obviously there's a lot of problems with weeds during the summer. We actually had more complaints last year. Now, that probably had to do with the drought than we had this year. But we also brought on a key employee this year. He's our horticultural specialist. And when we would get a complaint, we would have him go out there and follow up with the client, find out what the problem is, how can the weed be controlled organically, and then what we found, and which most businesses will find, is follow up with the client right away and give great customer service, and then they realize that you actually are backing your product or your service. So not a lot of complaints this year compared to last year, but I actually, at the end of this year, landed an HOA, it was roughly $20,000 contract, bidding up against heavy companies, Acres, Sieberts, and they went with our company strictly because we offered an organic fertilizing program. So I thought that was a huge testimony to the transition of the program and how people are looking to use a landscaper that has the sustainable services.
Yeah, and then most complaints have definitely been about the weeds. How will weeds be controlled? So we've been experimenting with some organic products like Fiesta, which is basically just chelated iron, um, and with moderate success. So that's kind of something we're still working out the kinks on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's so many factors between, your rain, your water issues, your irrigation, and so it's hard to control everything, but you always, that seems
Yeah,
to be always the number one complaint, regardless, is weeds. Do you guys
yeah.
soil test before your applications of compost tea?
We did a blank. We did. Let's see. The picture in the upper left corner. We took sort of different. Yeah, different properties that had different characteristics. So one was like a new development, one was had been using synthetics the last 10 years, one was just in
Mm,
front of our shop, never treated with anything. We tried to get a broad spectrum of conditions to send to the lab. Um, and so we sent out, I think it was maybe 8 samples early in the season. And then our intent was to send those back, or a new batch of samples this fall, but the lab, the Rodale Institute that we're using, no longer offers a soil test. Um, so we're not going to have a very good comparison on that. And then biological tests anywhere else are like at least $250. So we might do one or two next spring and see how we've done.
yeah. Okay, I think we're going to move on because we could probably be here all night just asking or lawn questions. So I'll
Yeah.
pass it back to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Teresa. Great questions. So this is something we really wanted to touch on. We have lots of pictures. We'll run you through here and just trust that there's a point behind them all. Um, this one in particular really speaks to carving out a niche for your company in terms of being a sustainable company. So this client right here, her name is Pat, and I met her at McHenry County Green Living Expo, where we were one of maybe two landscapers, um, and it was, a show that I was by myself. I think it cost $150 for our booth. Wasn't really getting great interactions with the people there, and Pat just kind of walked up, and we really hit it off. And she has 10 acres in Woodstock. Most of it's in conservation easement, and she was conveying to me that she didn't want just a landscaper. She wanted someone, like, she wanted a relationship, a landscaper she could have a relationship with, sort of an ongoing thing, because she had tried a couple in the past and it just hadn't worked out. Um, so we worked at her property, and I was able to have the conversations with her about growing food. She's in food policy, so about organic foods and native plants because they're on a conservation area, and just all these various topics that we were able to connect on a different level than most landscapers would be able to do. And we slowly gained each other's trust. Um, and that turned into at least a $20,000 installation this past summer, and lots more to do next season. And you can tell at the end of the at the end of the project, she cooked our guys food. She gave a toast. She just recently had us over to her house for a fall harvest dinner of mushrooms she grew and all this delicious food she grew on her property. So we've really bonded and formed a relationship with a client that's sort of beyond just a high level of customer service, but it's an actual relationship. So some examples that, you really have to get yourself out there on these various trade shows. A lot of the times people don't seem very interested, but it's always worth going and getting set up for that one person, that Pat, to come up and spark up that conversation. We try to bring things that are going to make us stand out from most companies. So the top picture, we brought our compost tea brewer because that's sort of intriguing for people to see. In the bottom picture, we have a bunch of native plants from our local supplier. And here's again the Green Living Expo from this year, where it's the Green Living Expo, and we're the only landscape company there. So I think it's really important to seek new avenues of exposure, involve yourself and your company with like-minded groups and organizations, which really goes back to things like MILA and ILCA. Really have to become involved with those organizations and meet the people with the knowledge and just make all these various connections, and that's sort of how you start to carve that niche out for your company. It's always worth asking, so always bring up the conversation about sustainable services that you offer with any client, and integrate those sustainable solutions and recommendations into all of your bids, all of your sales, all of your designs. Always make it, even if it's just a short paragraph or one recommendation, just include it, because it's a way to differentiate yourself, and in most instances will spark interest. And when building relationships with clients, there's enough clients out there who are skeptical and could care less about sustainability, but there's just as many who actually care and who are interested in it. So seek those out who will be truly engaged with what you're doing. And project something different. You know, like I said, we brought, in this setup you can see we brought some native plants in plug form, and we have the compost tea brewer, and it's just things that people aren't used to seeing their typical landscaper have set up. So this is a great example of just asking or including it in a bid. We took over the local schools, the middle school and the grade school, and we came up with a 5-year plan on how they could create a sustainable landscape, presented it to the board, and they said absolutely. You know, no one had ever, previous contractors never said, hey, why don't we rip out the turf in the front of school and plant a bunch of native plants, and it will be beautiful. And so that's happening right now. We've transitioned both schools, completely renovated both landscapes, and that was just our 2nd year being in the contract. This is a great example. This was the CalStar paver that we set as a goal to install. So this is, I think it's 40% recycled brick, and it's a great company because they have really in-depth studies, cradle to grave, on their product. But this client here, this young couple, they would have installed any patio. You know, Unilock, Holland stone would have been just fine, but we sort of just interjected in the conversation, hey, we can offer this sustainable recycled brick, and then it turned into, hey, we really care about that. That's something we're very interested in. And there's your CalStar paver patio. This is a good example of, you know, getting your foot in the door with just a simple project like creating a playground surround out of railroad ties. And it turns out that they live on this beautiful wooded property, and you strike up the conversation about native woodlands, and you find out that they love removing buckthorn, and they want to transition this forest into a pristine native habitat. And so that's turned into a yearly phased project where we're introducing more and more native plants and removing invasives on this property. This is the one that we had mentioned earlier about, we were seeking a client who wished to be serviced in a completely sustainable manner. So this woman, Lynn, called us up, and her goal is to have a demonstration age-in-place sustainable environment. So she backs up right to a conservation area. She just recently bought this property, and she's looking to have everything done organically and sustainably. She's a dream client. She's been working with a birdscaper, so one of her big goals is to attract a diversity of birds that she can view from her kitchen window. And so I've been working with her, and it's required more time and more effort and more conversations and more emails and little things, but you can see that the most recently completed work, we did 5 services. We did a fall cleanup, we installed compost bins, prepared landscape beds, installed plants. We took all the brush, we removed a bunch of buckthorn, and we literally made a brush pile for birds. We trimmed the boxwood hedge, and we left all the clippings as mulch underneath the boxwoods to attract birds, which was recommended by the birdscaper. We ripped out a bunch of yews and euonymus and purple plum and planted winterberry holly and some viburnum and things that would feed birds in early and late season. But you can see by doing all of that, we built out 1655, and with our labor and material, we ended up making $1,145 in only a half day. We kept all of the leaves on site. I would say it's at least an acre property, just covered in maple leaves. We're able to mulch those up and keep it all as part of the composting operation. And this is a pretty cool picture. I mean, we bought the veneer stone from our supplier. I'm not even sure what we would have done with, I don't know if there's a deposit on these boxes or not. So those would have just gone to the landfill, or we would have gotten rid of them some other way, and we were able to sell that box as part of a composting bin for a sustainable client to keep leaves, so the composting can continue throughout the summer. This is sort of a unique thing we have going for our company, is that we share our shop with Bodie Tree Care. You can see Erik Bodie in the lower left-hand corner there. He's sort of a jack of all trades. He can build a truck from the ground up, but he has a tub grinder. So we're literally able to bring back all of our debris, all of our chips and tree debris back to the shop and turn that into locally sourced and produced mulch. It's 100% organic and it doesn't have dyes. And Erik will run you through some numbers on that.
So like sustainability makes sense. I was running some numbers because before we would pay $10 a yard to get rid of our debris, and we would dump it at another site that had a tub grinder. But I formed a relationship with Bodie Tree Care. He's really a good friend. And roughly last year, or 2013, we installed 1,500 yards of our mulch, which ultimately is 2,000 yards of debris, because after you run it through the tub grinder twice, it actually condenses it roughly by a third. So instead of removing 2,000 yards at $10 a yard, which is roughly $20,000, we actually turned that into mulch that we kept on site, so we didn't have to bring any trucks in or semis to dump mulch, and we installed all that mulch. And it's really nice because in the morning, I can tell my guys to load up 20, 30 yards of mulch, and it's just right in our backyard. So obviously this is a unique situation that I formed a relationship, but it's unbelievable how much money it's saved and how sustainable it is at the same time.
Again, this is another example of making connections through being involved with organizations. So as a part of the ILC Sustainable Landscape Committee, we brought on Kevin from Kevin's Rain Gardens, and Kevin Hebert just so happens to work right down the street from us in Barrington. He does not have a full-on landscaping company, and he would like to transition more into just design. So together we collaborated, and as ringers, we haven't really been specialized or promoting rain gardens. And so this is sort of an avenue for us to get that experience while working with Kevin, while he's securing clients and we are installing his projects. And that's just as profitable, if not more so, than most projects, because you can charge a premium price. Again, being involved with the community. This is Smart Farm, which is they grow food organically and donate it to the local food pantry. We've installed a drip irrigation system at one of their sites, and recently this summer we installed a rainwater harvesting setup for their hoop house. So just getting to know them has sort of connected what, she invited me out to do beekeeping at a property and is getting us involved with some bigger ideas with food. She introduced us to Carl Alguar from Smart Gardener, and he would like to work with us on building, installing, and maintaining vegetable gardens for large residential sites. So we're already starting this winter to work on that and develop potentially another division of ringers just focused on growing food. And here's Ken Williams. He's Eric mentioned earlier, our horticultural specialist. We brought him aboard this year. He just happened to walk into our door one day, and he's been unbelievable with his experience. And he's able to have conversations with clients that are on that other level of really knowing his plants, really knowing the science behind things, and really able to convey his experiences that he's had. He's really good with working with chemicals, keeping things clean, and he's sort of, I like to think of Ken or a client or a employee like Ken as sort of our edge, because most landscapers don't have an employee who's able to communicate with clients in such a way and offer that much experience. And here's just a quick example of him communicating with clients. This was a letter that he wrote to all our fertilizing clients mid-season and just kind of keeping them updated on what he's seeing out in the field. We thought it'd be kind of cool to touch on when does sustainability not make sense. And there's some cases where early in our career, this was a client that we had. He was one of our original clients. You know, when Eric started the business, he was mowing this guy's lawn. And you see above that this area would flood and it would basically just be a mud pit. And he wanted it regraded and resodded. And I was very excited because I saw a perfect opportunity for planting a bunch of native plants and creating this huge rain garden and promoting biodiversity, and you know, just got really excited about things. Whereas this client, he's an elderly man, he's not really attuned to the sustainability movement or native plantings or managing stormwater in a sustainable way. But we sort of pitched him on the idea, and he kind of bought into it. But maybe our expectations or our values weren't aligned with the client on this one. And on top of it, we installed it during the drought. So it was really tough getting things watered and established. And here it is today, and it's something that we would call a success. In my hearts of heart, I believe we did the right thing, but it's sort of been a battle back and forth with the client, something that we have probably lost money on, if anything. And so that's just managing client expectations and really picking and choosing the right clients to do these projects with, because otherwise it can turn something that could have been profitable into something that might be a losing battle. And so just, again, managing client expectations is a huge part of communicating, especially if you're going to be doing sustainable services. We just added in the upper right-hand corner, based off of the drought from last year, a bunch of different things that our clients can expect from us. And part of managing expectations is conveying that maintenance will always be required on all projects, especially with sustainable installations with native plants and rain gardens. There's a higher level of understanding required, and there's a certain niche to be filled with maintaining and getting those things off to a good start so they don't just turn into a weed patch. So we always offer a maintenance program with all our installations, which you can kind of see detailed here. And then again, we offer clients information, educating them on proper watering techniques, on mulching, fertilizing. And if you were to read this, I don't expect you to read this all right now, but we sort of interject sustainable thoughts into this. So conserving water, when's mulching appropriate? You don't need to fertilize your plants every single year. So just always including that into any kind of material that you're handing out to your clients. And people, you'd be surprised, people really rely on these documents. You know, I've seen clients laminate these and post them up in their garage, and so they really take your word for it, and they're really paying attention more than you would think. Any questions?
Okay, guys, I'm gonna look. Just someone wanted to know just if you could repeat the name of the recycled pavers that you used on the patio.
That was CalStar, CalStar.
Okay. And you did mention that you haven't used corn gluten on your wheat, on your, right? You haven't done that yet.
No, we have not.
Okay.
What we felt was the future. So we think the landscaper's higher calling is sort of a good title for, we have to think of ourselves as stewards of all that sustains us in terms of the soil, plants, and water. Our industry really is perfectly positioned to drive change, for all people to act more sustainably in their daily lives. We see limitless potential for innovation both in the field and in business practices. There's, from what we can tell, there's few and far between companies who are really pushing the envelope in the landscape industry. And we really believe our services can play a vital role in reversing climate change, promoting biodiversity, and helping to secure the safety of our food, air, and water resources. And then always love to show these pictures of, these are right in our backyard, taken with an iPhone out in the field. Our native rose, a bloodroot, which is a ephemeral woodland wildflower. The upper right-hand corner is a shagbark hickory in early spring, just leafing out, which looks like a tropical plant, which are supporting these creatures and supporting biodiversity. So we have garden spiders and brown bats and robins. And really think that humans are a resilient species and will adapt no matter what. It just goes back to the frog in the boiling pot of water. We really think the time to act is now. And so we feel inspired to really start making these changes, and we see a lot of other companies through the involvement with MELA and ILCA really making great strides towards sustainability. And that's about it.
Taping today for tomorrow. I just love that tagline. I want to thank you guys for sharing your business information with all of us, and